Good afternoon. I'm Amber Maribal with Purina Animal Nutrition, and Purina is the proud sponsor of the Nighthawk Dairy Virtual Farm Tour. We would like to extend a really big thank you to the Like family for being here to share their story with us today. If throughout the presentation you guys have questions, feel free to write them on your notepad, and then at the end, raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone so everybody can hear the question as you guys have them. But with that, I would appreciate it if you join me in giving Jim Like a warm welcome.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Amber. I'm here with my wife, Kay, and we have Kevin, our calf and heifer specialist, in the back with his wife, Amanda, and their 6-week-old son, Samuel. So we can get started here. This is an overview picture of our farm. And the 3 owners are myself, Jim, and my cousins, Chris and Steve Like. Steve is kind of the silent partner, so he doesn't show up on the video too much, and he didn't want to be here to talk. Chris was supposed to be here, but he backed out about a couple hours ago, so not sure why. But so I'm running alone here. Of the 3 owners, I'm the youngest one. Steve's the oldest. He's going to be retiring in a year and a half, so he's kind of exiting the operation. Chris and I basically take care of the management. Steve works wherever he's needed. My main focus on the farm is the calf and heifers. I have 4 employees that I manage, and we take care of the newborn calves through 1-year-old. And Chris is in charge of the dairy herd. He takes care of everything that happens on the milking side of the road. And together we work on crop production. Half of our acres are in corn silage and half is in hay. So we collaborate on that. We have a short video here we'll start with to give you an overview of our farm, and then we'll go back to the slides. It's going to work. The Like family is well known in the community. We always have been. We're proud of what we have. My grandfather Archie developed a separate dairy across the street from the home farm. In order to pay for this new dairy, they built a barn to use as a dance hall. These farms, which were being run by our grandfathers, were eventually passed down to our fathers, who in the early 70s incorporated them as Like Farms Incorporated and Like Green Acres. I'm sure if our great-grandfather could come back and see what is happening today, not just here, but in the dairy industry in general. There's been so many improvements. The technology that we use nowadays, they wouldn't be able to fathom.
I wish they could see it because I think they would be at awe. We're definitely trying to get as much out of our animals as we can so we can still do what we like to do.
We have 900 adult cows, 600 calves and heifers. And I've always had an interest in the calves and the heifers. I like the challenge of getting these calves off to a good start.
From day one when we merged, I think Jim really liked the calves and I liked the cows. I think you could put 10 pounds to 15 pounds on a cow just by the way you treat her. We're milking between 8 and 825 3 times a day in a double 12 milking parlor.
It's basically a 24-hour operation with 3 separate milking shifts that come in and throughout the day. The calves are the future herd here at Nighthawk Dairy. Those are the replacements. We only feed our nursery calves for 3 to 5 days by hand, and then they move into the auto feeder section. Twice a week we come in with fresh bedding. It's always fun just to go out there and watch them run around or push the exercise ball around.
Clean always means better health. Better health means it's easier for you to do your job. You got to have healthy calves, you got to have healthy cows, you got to feed them right. we take a lot of pride in where we've been and where we're going.
We've had people tell us after they came through the tour that if I ever came back as a cow, I'd love to be a cow on Nighthawk Dairy. So Nighthawk Dairy has only been in operation for about 4 years, but our family heritage in the dairy industry goes back at least 200 years back to Germany, where our relatives originated from, and then they immigrated over through New York and settled over in the eastern part of the state. Then in about 1890, our great-grandfather came over to the Stratford area in the central part of Wisconsin, where we're located in Marathon County. He came there to work in the lumber camps, because that's when they were clearing a lot of the land in central Wisconsin to make the dairy industry what it is today. So he was working there for a few years in one of the local lumber camps, and he happened to fall in love with the camp cook, a young girl. And her family was actually farming south of Stratford, where we're located from. So after their marriage, or before that even, he bought some farmland right next to her parents. So then he started the Like Farm, the Like name. That was about 1900, where he started the original farm, the farm that we expanded to build Nighthawk. They raised 4 children, or 4 boys and 1 girl, and music was always a big part of her family. Back in that time, that was the big entertainment. You know, they get together and have parties and play music and dances. So they had a family orchestra that my grandfather and Chris and Steve's grandfather were a part of, called the Nighthawk Entertainers. So that's how we came up with the Nighthawk Dairy. So then to go back, this was back in the 20s. So my grandfather, Archie, was farming on the home farm with his grandpa, or not his grandpa, but with his father and his brother, Laurie, which is Chris and Steve's grandpa. So my grandpa wanted to start his own farm, but they didn't have enough money to purchase the land and build the barn and get another dairy herd going. So they built the barn, the tie stall barn, finished the upstairs as a dance hall, called that the Elmwood Ballroom. So this is in the late 20s, early 30s, during the Prohibition era. So every Thursday night they would have barn dances. They had bands that would come up from Chicago and over from the cities, and they would charge admission. And like I said, this being the Prohibition era, they may have had some alcoholic beverages that they were selling, locally made, which my grandpa's father had his, should say that when they started this farm, my great-grandfather, he moved to town so the boys could do the farming because they had plenty of help. He started a saloon and a hotel in town, so he was serving some of the drinks there too, and bragging how good this alcohol was that they were producing at the dances. The Prohibition era, the federal agents were out looking for who was making this alcohol. So they happened to get wind that my grandfather was making this at home. But luckily there was another Like farm a few miles away. They sent him over there, and while that farm was getting raided, they took everything and threw it out in the woods and buried it. So we've been looking for it ever since, but we haven't found it. So it's kind of the fun side of our family history. But then through the years, we kind of farmed separately, our family. Myself and my brother Pete farmed together for many years as Like Farms Incorporated, and Steve and Chris farmed together as Like's Green Acres. In 1974, my father and my uncle hosted Farm Progress Days that year. So we started out as a single farm, and for many years we farmed separately, but then we started sharing some equipment, and we both were in need of different facilities and labor issues, so we started talking about merging our farms back together the way they were. So 4 years ago, that's what we did. It's been very successful since then. We've doubled the size of our operation. So we're happy. I'm happy to be here. I wish they would have came here to help present to you, but do my best to do it on my part. So go to the next slide. I should say we have a 900 cow Holstein herd. 600 calves and heifers for replacements. 1,700 acres we farm, and we have about 20 total employees. And we have a little calf video here we'll show you on that part of it. Well, I really enjoy taking care of the calf and heifers here on Nighthawk Dairy. Calves are the future of our operation. Now there's a lot more focus on feeding the calves a high plane of nutrition to get them off to a really good start, to get them growing quickly. Our calf program is unique here. We invest a lot of time and a lot of resources into growing our calves. Generally, we try to have about 30 calves a month born as replacements. They put them in an individual sanitized pen, so they're fed 1 gallon of colostrum within 1 hour of birth. I decided to take that one step further. Now I try to get a 2nd gallon of colostrum into these newborn heifer calves within 8 hours. So we have 2 Forster Technic automatic calf feeders. This is all computerized. From day 10 to day 42, the calves are allowed to eat whatever they want to eat. We get great growth on these calves right away. So our computer will track daily intakes from day 1 to the day that she's off of milk. Happens to just be 1 individual calf. Her liters consumed, she ranged anywhere from 9 liters up to 18 liters. Pounds of milk powder, and that 3 to 6, 7 pounds. We used to have hutches. Quickly became overwhelmed with the labor that was involved. Now we spend just as many hours doing the calf chores, but we're spending the time with the calves. We're out in the pens, checking on their health. 6 times a day, we'll walk through the pens, picking up any soiled areas of bedding. Every 2 weeks, we'll start over with a fresh bedding area. When we give them new bedding, it's always fun just to go out there and watch them run around or push the exercise ball around. It gives them good, strong lungs, builds their muscles. Every 10 days, we'll weigh the calves. When they're first starting to get weaned, they've been averaging about 1.5 pounds of starter per day. 2 weeks later, when they're completely weaned, we're getting around 6, 7 pounds of starter into these calves on a daily basis. When everybody is off milk, the entire group of calves that's in one pen, we'll just move them over into our weaned section of the barn. We keep the AmpliCalf starter in front of them 24 hours a day, so that every 2.5 weeks or so that we move in a new group of calves, they'll be moved down to the next pen, and that's where we'll introduce the 18% AmpliCalf grower. So as they get up to that 10 pounds per day of the grower, we'll add more and more hay to their diet. There's no beginning and end on the dairy farm. The goal is to get them raised up to that correct size, correct weight. So when they go into the milking string, they can thrive in that environment. The ultimate goal is to raise a calf that doesn't need any antibiotics, any treatments, has great health all the way through, eventually her entire life, and that should equate to a longer career. So all of our calves are born over in what we call our transition barn. But the only calves that I get on my side of the road, I still call it my side of the road because where Lake Farms was, that's all the calves and heifers. And on the Lakes Green Acres side, that's where the cow herd is. So we, one farm, but we still, I like to joke around that we have Nighthawk South and Nighthawk North. So we kind of have our separate areas where we do what we want to do without stepping on anybody's toes. So when the heifers come over, they come over wet. We usually take them out within a half an hour, just because it's a dirtier environment over there. We bring them into a clean, sanitized pen. And in the wintertime, we'll make sure we dry them off really good with towels. We put calf jackets on them. We'll throw a heater in the front of it to keep them warm. They get that gallon of pasteurized colostrum. We freeze and pasteurize all of our first milking colostrum. And then the heifers that we're going to raise get the best colostrum. So within 8 hours after birth, I save colostrum for them. We don't freeze it. And sometimes I don't pasteurize it because I want to feed it raw. There's a little more nutrients there for them. So within 8 hours, I have 2 gallons of colostrum in most of these calves. And then we dehorn them with paste. They'll stay in the pen for about 5 days, so they're drinking off the bottle on the side quite well by themselves. And then they'll get moved into the next part of the barn, which is the weaned area where the automatic calf feeders are. That was on my next slide, but I do take blood samples, so I've been able to track the total proteins. And after I've started feeding this second feeding of colostrum, which has been about 3 months, I've been able to raise my total protein score about one point, and I think it's really helping with health. I have less scours, and the BRD, respiratory problems, seem to be a little bit less, so getting that extra colostrum in, I think, has really helped them. We genomic test all of our calves at about 1 month old. Then we only raise the best ones. We use a lot of sex semen on the heifers, so we raise about 30 heifer calves a month. So about 1 out of 3 calves we raise, the other 2/3 are sold in a local market within 3 days after birth. We focus on the health traits. We test through Zoetis, so we're looking at their dairy health score. We use the net merit, the DPR for breeding. I said before that 90% of those heifers we use the sex semen on, and 10% we use Angus on the heifers, the ones that we don't want a replacement from. These are the calf pens. We call our feeder pens, group pens. It's positive pressure tube ventilation that runs 24/7. It's a supplement to the curtain sidewalls that we have. So in the winter when we have the curtains up, we always have fresh air coming in. We leave them run all summer because sometimes the wind stops blowing at night, so we still have fresh air coming into the barn. The cleaning and the bedding is very important. We walk through the pen probably 6 times a day, take a fork in there, and we fork out any soiled bedding at the end of the pen. It's an opportunity to check for calf health. If a calf is laying down and her ears are down, or you see like a snotty nose, it's a great opportunity to watch the calves for the health issues. So we give them an exercise ball during the day only, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. They get an exercise ball. So on weekends, nobody wants to deal with the ball because it gets really dirty at the end of the day. It's covered with manure and slimy. So every night we wash it up, sanitize it so it's clean for the next day. A while back, I read an article that said that can help with pen moves as they get older. It's a stimulus in the pen, so we don't want to have it in there all the time because then it becomes a part of the pen. So we want to keep it kind of unique for them. That's why they only get it during the day. We have the 2 automatic calf feeders from Forster Technic. Like I said earlier, or what we had said earlier, is we used to feed in hutches. We probably spend at least as much time feeding calves now, but it's a different type of management. Where before we were carrying milk around all the time and feeding them and spending a lot of time cleaning hutches. Now it's just cleaning, keeping everything clean and taking care of calves. We feel we can do a lot better job at taking care of these calves as individuals, where in the hutches, especially in a cold, snowy environment like central Wisconsin is, you just run out there and do your chores and back in the warm barn as fast as you can. You didn't spend a lot of time with the calves. So we really like the group housing for that aspect. And we have a computer that tracks their daily consumption. It'll show me their eating speed. So if somebody's getting sick, they'll usually slow down the amount of intake, so we can track that. And it also shows breaks. Or a healthy calf will stay on the nipple and keep drinking. Somebody that's starting not to feel good, drink for a little while and then back up. So that'll all show up on the computer. We feed the Cows Match AmpliCalf grower, starter, milk replacer. This summer we use the Cows Match warm front, and in the winter we use the cold front. We offer free choice milk for the calves from week 1 through week 6. They're allowed to eat 2.5 liters of milk every 2 hours. So if they'd come up and eat their 2.5 liters and then come back in an hour and a half, they wouldn't be allowed to eat for another half hour. So it's basically unlimited. And then after 6 weeks, it's slowly ratcheted down. So my goal is to have 180 pounds of milk powder in them by the time I wean them, which is generally around 60 days. And the biggest tool that I have to help me with the weaning and when I'm going to wean them is the scale that we have in the corner of our barn. So we get a birth weight off of them, and then every 10 days we'll run each group of calves through the scale. We're looking for the weight, so I'm tracking the weight and comparing that how they weighed 10 days ago. It's a great opportunity to check these calves. I check their navel, check their ear tag. And in the winter they have the jackets on so we can expand their jackets as they're growing. And being in that group environment that they're kind of hard to catch by themselves and do that kind of thing. So this way every 10 days we're doing that health check. And then I'll move the calves based on size. We average 85 pounds on a newborn calf, but our range can be anywhere from 65 to 110. So a big calf might be growing a lot faster than a small calf. So I will move them back, put them back in a smaller pen. They're all in and all out, so we generally have 2 weeks worth of calves in one pen. And that's how we like to rotate them through the barn. But if somebody needs to be on milk for 70 days versus 60 days, then I put them on milk longer. Or if somebody's really growing, I'll wean them at 45 days. On average, we've been doubling their birth weight by 45, 46 days on the Purina program. So we introduced the starter feed just in a little bin in the front of the pen where they have access to their warm water. They don't eat much that first 5 weeks, but once that weaning phase kicks in, really see the difference of how they pick up on intake on that starter. Once in a while I'll weigh it, and it's generally about 1.5 pounds intake before they're starting to get weaned, and then 2 weeks later when that whole pen is weaned, they're up to 6 or 7 pounds of starter per day. I like to think as they're used to all those calories that they're getting from that milk powder that it just converts over to the starter. It's an easy transition for them. This is our wean barn where they go into after they come out of the feeder pens. We have 6 different pens. 4 pens are smaller, and that's a group that they'll stay in as they were as young calves. The first pen that they come in, we have a calf brush. They spend a lot of time on that brush. I think it gives them another activity to do. We don't really have any problems of calves sucking on each other. They spend a lot of time at the brush, so they like that. And we also have some lick tubs that we keep in there, extra vitamins and minerals. And then every 2.5 weeks, due to our rotation on our calves, we just move them from pen to pen. They're in there from 2 to 6 months old. The end pens are the larger pens, so that's when they start learning to get into a bigger pen size. And we convert them over to the AmpliCalf grower. We gain close to 2.5 pounds a day. We average about 2 pounds of growth on the milk side of it. And then when they get into where they're eating the starter or the grower, we're getting close to 2.5 pounds of growth per day. On the grower feed, they transition over. We feed pellets, a pelleted feed on the starter and the grower. So at 13 weeks, when they get transitioned over to that grower, it's an easy transition for them. They're eating up to 10 pounds per day of the grower. Then we start adding some good grassy hay. And at 24 weeks, that's when they start getting some TMR. Now this is what we call our grower barn. There's 200 heifers in here, 4 pens, 50 heifers in a pen. They're in here from 6 to 12 months old. We have 2 different rations. The younger side of the animals get a little higher protein than the older ones. Go back to this one then. As they move down the line here, pen 3 is our pre-breeding pen. So before I put them into pen 4, which is the breeding pen, we'll take them back out at about 10.5, 11 months old, depending on their size. We'll take them back up to the scale that's in the other barn. Before they're allowed to go into the breeding pen, we weigh everybody because we want them at least 875 pounds before they go into the breeding pen. And I track a lot of different data due to weighing and all of our treatments and everything that we track. Now we've been averaging their first artificial insemination that they get is at 54 weeks, so just over a year old, and they're at 900 pounds. So our age at first calving is 21.5 months. I will breed them down to 320 days, which makes our nutritionist Mike a little nervous, but we make sure they're over 900 pounds at that time. So they're pretty big. So there's pictures of our team Nighthawk. I mean, we like to say that there's no beginning and end on our dairy farm. Just like there's no job that's more important. Any of us owners will do any job. There's nothing that we won't do that we expect anybody else to do. Everybody's job is important. We all need to work together. So our current herd statistics, like I said, this isn't my side of the operation, but I'll try to do my best to explain this. We're milking about 840 cows, I think, right about now. So we're shipping about around 80,000 pounds per day. We direct load on the tankers. Butter fat 3.9, protein 3.1, cell count 125. The reproduction and genetics, half of our milking herd we breed to Limousine due to the genomic testing that we do. And we've been artificial breeding through GenX for over 75 years. So we're really committed to only raising the least number of calves, heifer calves that we need. So that's why we're breeding half of our herd to beef, because they bring a premium at the sale barn, usually $150, $250 more for the black calves. And when they're born, there's no guessing about, do we raise that heifer calf or not? If it's a Holstein heifer, they're hard to get rid of. So we've got that on our calving sheet. It's all marked down if it's sold. So then they're out the door right away. And with the investment that we have in our facilities, and my cost for raising a calf from birth to freshening is about $2,500, and I know springers are going for about $1,500 now. So there's no way I'm going to try to sell springers because that's a losing proposition. 2 years ago, we built our transition barn. We like to call that our vacation barn. This 3/4 of the barn is just pregnant cows waiting, or heifers, springers. Within the next 4 months, they'll be calving. So we put in a 6-stall parallel parlor for treated and fresh cows. We don't milk any of our treated cows in our main parlor. That's only for saleable milk. Since we're at that 900 cow size on a double 12 parlor, we're pretty much running around the clock. We have 3 people on staff. So as soon as the calf is born, she's milked in the transition parlor right away, so that we're able to either store that colostrum or feed it to a newborn calf. 50-day dry period. We have 4 individual calving pens. So we have our fresh cow checks. We have a pre-fresh pen that generally has around 50 cows in it, 3 weeks off of calving or so. And that's checked hourly by one of the employees. And when they start seeing signs of calving, that's when they'll put them into the maternity pens. This is the transition barn. It's tunnel ventilated. Our milking barn's the same way. Sand bedding, cow brushes. Cow comfort's very important for us. We have the double 12 parlor with the 3 times a day milking. Basically around the clock. It's a 7-hour shift and then 1 hour for cleaning in between. Our crops and forages. This year we planted all BMR corn, about 800 acres of BMR corn, and then we planted 100 acres of tropical corn. It's 130-day corn for our heifers and dry cows. We have an answer plot on our farm for the last 3 years run by Winfield. We give a lot of tours on our farm, being that we're close to town. The Like families have always been, shall I say, respected for our farming operations. We've always tried to keep a good image, keep everything clean. So when we expanded 4 years ago, we had a lot of interest. People want to see the farm. So for the last 2 years, the local FFA chapter has been having a dairy breakfast at a country air banquet hall, what it's called. So they have the dairy breakfast about 4 or 5 miles away. Then they bus people out to the farm and we give tours for them, anybody that wants to come and see them. Community involvement. Chris is involved in the local co-op board. He's been a board member for at least 20 years. His father was a board member. Our grandpa was a board member on equity in the local bank. Our family has been very involved with building the dairy industry in the Stratford area. My grandpa went out and bought cows and brought them into the area. So we've been very involved with the community. This year, something new is we're a Purina ambassador farm. It's a new program that Purina is starting. It's giving us a great opportunity to tell our story. We're hoping that we're not just telling our story to fellow dairy producers. We're hoping this grows into something bigger where the general public can see how well not only us, but the majority of dairy producers in particular take care of their animals and how important their animals are to them. So Purina will bring in people that we give tours. We're open to anybody who needs tours. I've given tours to people who have family reunions in the area, and they'll call and say they want to give a tour. They want a tour for their family. That's why on the video, we have had about at least 6 people that have said, if I ever came back as a cow, I want to be a cow or a calf on Nighthawk Dairy. I don't know if, Rod, you ever said that, but somebody said that and was like, well, you might not make the genetic test and you might be the one that sold. So.
I don't like your color.
Like I said, there's no beginning or end on a dairy farm. There's no one particular spot that's more important. The calf raising is not more important than the breeding. You need a healthy cow to get a healthy calf. If you don't have a healthy calf, you're not going to have a healthy cow. So it's a full circle. There's no beginning or end point in that circle. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Just one sec. Let's get the microphones to the people that are streaming.
Your software interfaces, talk about some of the technologies you use, like your data coming off your feeders. Does that interface with your cow software? Like, I don't know if it's
We use the feed supervisor, the feed program, so that's all tied in with the computer. We've got that in the tractor mixer and on the end loader, so we can track what's being fed, how it's being fed. We use the Del Pro system in the parlor, so we're tracking all that. Currently, we don't DHI test, but being an ambassador herd for Purina, we may be doing some of that because part of the ambassador program is if we may be trying some of their newer products and doing some feed trials on our farm. So if we do that, it's going to be important to get the components tested.
How about your interface on your weights coming out of calves, your repro, is that all in like a Dairy Comp or?
Dairy Comp 305 is what we use, yep.
Okay.
I still keep a lot of paper records because I like that. I've got binders full.
Is your grandpa coming out here again?
Yeah.
I have a question about hoof trimming. What is your program and when do you start?
Every 2 weeks we have the hoof trimmer comes out to the farm. I believe they get trimmed twice during a lactation. But generally we have very good hoof health. They go through a foot bath 5 times a week on the milking herd. Then every 2 weeks we run the dry cows and the springing heifers through a formaldehyde foot bath, just kind of a maintenance program.
Can you talk a little bit about the use of sex semen? What do you do with adult cows versus the heifers? And
the adult cows, we use the sex semen on the first lactation heifers 1 time, versus on the heifers we're using it 3 times. The 4th time we'll go to just a regular semen, and the 5th time they would go to a beef semen. So they get 5 times to get pregnant. So I've sold open heifers that we couldn't get bred at 15 months old already. Because we don't put them into the breeding pen and then wait for them to get bred. When they go into the breeding pen, we want them bred. So the computer will generate a list, anybody that's been in the pen more than 30 days. So then our technician, he watches all that. He chalks tails, walks and chalks them on the heifers. And the cows, that's all off of activity monitors. So we have activity for breeding in the milking barn.
whenever you started your partnership, who did you buy the farm from technically, and also then how will the oldest partner retire? How will he do that with the partnership?
Well, actually, Nighthawk Dairy is owned by Like Farms Incorporated and Likes Green Acres. So like I said, I had farmed 30 years with my brother, and he didn't want to be a part of Nighthawk Dairy. So before we built Nighthawk Dairy, I bought him out of his share of the Like Farms. And now when Steve wants to retire, Chris will have to buy him out of Likes Green Acres.
Can you give me an approximate cost of production on that dairy?
About $17.50. We have a lot of debt. I mean, we've built everything in the last 4 years. We've basically we've replaced almost everything. The only thing that we use is the original freestall barn. We've spent close to $1 million just on our calf facilities. So that's why I said we've got a lot invested on that calf facility. But we feel that is the future of our herd. And the ultimate goal that we have is through the way we feed our calves on that 40 Fit program, the unlimited feeding, and the breeding program that we use, and the genetic and clarified testing. We want to raise the age of our herd. Currently it's about 4.5, 5 years old. We can get that to 6 or 7, increase milk production, lower cull rate. The longer we can milk a cow, the better off we're going to be. We need less replacements. Mike Rosh, our nutritionist, is here today, so he's a big help. I mean, he's constantly watching the rations. Health is the big thing. We need healthy animals. That's why we have to take care of them. That's our number one goal is health.
Could you take a minute and tell us about your employee program? I believe I saw 20 people on your payroll. Type of incentive programs you might have, and anything along that line?
Well, we currently have all Hispanics that do our milking, and most of them are provided housing. And we provide some of the heat and electrical with that. And obviously, labor has been going up. It's been more of a challenge these last couple of years. All wages are going up. We try to provide a good work environment. We don't really have any incentive programs. I mean, we feel we pay them well, and they're expected to do a good job. And we'll take care of them and try to just have a good work environment for them to work in. Try to keep everything nice and clean. Basically, new facilities, so that helps. We use a lot of technology.
What's the turnover on labor?
Turnover on labor, we've been pretty good. We don't turn over very often. We've been very fortunate on that.
Have you seen an uptick in the last year?
Not on turnover, but I shouldn't say we have our core group that's kind of been with us, but we have to hire like probably 2 or 3 other milkers, and those 2 or 3 has been a higher turnover. And yeah, they know they can go to another dairy for 50 cents an hour more, and they're not afraid to do it. They're just kind of using just the labor situation, But the core group that we've had with us, they've been very good. And 2 different families, so on the Hispanic side, and Kevin and we've got a full-time mechanic. They're both younger. They enjoy the work that they're doing. We try to make it enjoyable, much as it can be.
Oh, how many calves do you have per day? I mean,
3 we would average. I mean, some days we won't have any heifers. Calves come over to the nursery, and sometimes there'll be 5 of them show up.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, we've got days where there's 1 or 2 that are going to calve, and then we look on the calving list, there's 20.
Yeah.
So we try to keep it consistent, but that's impossible. But that's what's nice about having the 24-hour shift.
And then if you do have a couple calves sucking on each other, what do you?
Never really had that issue. I mean, between having the exercise balls in there and the little lick block for them, and I keep them in the starter. Right. Mm-hmm. And they're well fed, so they're not hungry.
Yeah.
Have you compared age at first calving with your ME305s on those heifers?
Yeah, Chris has been keeping track of that, but really hasn't seen much difference. I mean, they need to be big enough. Quicker we can get them milking, the better, as long as they're large enough. So.
Are there any other questions? All right, well, join me in thanking the Like family and Jim for being with us today.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay.